And I got to a point where I was just so like upset with how my life was.
Another question I wrote down
Mm-hmm.
was, what do you think how our society influences our, or basically like men's ability to talk about feelings?
That's a good one. I definitely think it's changed in the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly believe like social media is such a curse for guys
Yeah.
because of what they see. They like, especially if you want to be active and you like try and find like gym tips or whatever, the bodies you see, the way men portray themselves, it's so like not normal, and it creates such a toxic environment.
Yeah. To mention that, like, what we see on social media is 1% of
Yeah.
like the prettiest people and the most successful people.
Yeah.
So there's no sense to compare yourself with
Yeah.
what you see online.
The way social media works of putting you to stuff that you want to see.
Yeah.
Not to say that there aren't really good pages out there or
Yeah,
really
they
good.
are.
There's loads.
Mental health of Jacob.
Yeah. Just one of them.
Just one of them.
But like there is loads of,
No,
and
there
it's really interesting. Like I've got obviously my mental health Instagram page and my like normal Instagram page, and like the difference in what comes up on both of them is so different.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Like my mental health one is full of just like positive quotes,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
how to deal with these things if you're anxious attachment, like all those stuff, like help thing. And then my one is fun. I love it. It's loads of jokes and loads of like content, but it definitely pushes a lot of content that I just think is not helpful for young men, because as you said, like this, you see things about how you should be as a man.
Yeah.
Like I talked about before, like Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
The fact that like he's pushed forward as like what a guy should be.
Yeah.
You know, like how damaging that is for young men. How do you solve that problem? Like, how do you solve like social media?
Yeah.
Like,
that's the thing. Like, I met so many people, even on my travels, that they found themselves just scrolling the whole time. And it was so shocking for me, because I'm actually not sure if I ever found myself in actually scrolling or like being lost in scrolling, because how I consume social media is obviously, of course, I go on my For You page and like watch some stuff. But after maybe 5 minutes, I'm like, oh no, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're wasting your time.
you've got a lot more self-control than me.
Maybe. So like I go off. So I never had like a big problem with like getting lost in social media, but it is such a big thing for like other people. The times I spent more time than 5 minutes on social media, for example, what helped me was I wrote down every single thing that triggered me. It doesn't have to be negative or positive, it doesn't matter. Just like sometimes you watch a reel with a music and you have your own memory to the song, but you see something completely different. So like I wrote down basically everything. If you do it for 5 minutes, you have like enough to like write down. So that helped me to like spend less time on social media and also to track how it influences me and like what I feel or how I perceive it.
Yeah, it's crazy how it can change your mood.
Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes like I was on Instagram and it was just like right before bed, which we shouldn't do as well. But like my phone was off and I was laying in bed and I was like, why do I feel the way I feel right now? And then I wrote it down. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And I could like let go of that because I knew what the reason was and I was more aware of like how I perceive and what I consume. All the successful people or all the people who are behind Facebook or Instagram or whatever, they don't use it because they are well aware of how addicted it is.
The way that it's programmed isn't programmed to make you have fun. It's just programmed to keep you on it's the longest. So it doesn't care about how you feel about it.
Like a good documentary is
it the one on Netflix?
The Social Dilemmas.
Yeah.
So like you should watch that. It's really good. Have you seen it?
Yeah. That's what I mean about how it's programmed to like keep you coming back.
Exactly. Always keep in mind that social media is not your life. And see it as a distraction rather than putting your mindset into the thought of like comparing what you see online, because our life is still happening outside. Go outside. That's where your real life is happening, not on fucking social media.
It's something that like I always like when I post stuff on my stories. I'm like, oh, why am I posting? Like I always ask myself like, why am I posting this? And like a lot of the time it's just because this is something that I want to share because it's like I don't know. I just want to share it. Like,
if you're in the mindset of like just feeling that you want to share it, then that's perfect.
So like I will go through like stages where I might not post anything for like a week or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'll just post like 15 stories in one day.
Yeah.
So easy to then like get into that mode of like, seeing what other people are posting, and then like, I need to post something like that, or like, I need to do something to it. Like it's so quick and easy to get to that stage with it. And
especially thinking about, if I'm gonna post it, what will people think of?
Are people gonna think I'm cool, or like, you know?
And like what helped me was basically going overseas because obviously like my friends, I started my travel account mainly because people from back home told me, just create a spam account. So a spam account is there for to just spam and give a shit. Just like that people know what I'm up to, where I am. It quickly changed to like expressing my thoughts and my feelings. So like the spam account was not really, I mean, it was still part of it, because if I look back,
still expressing yourself.
If I look back now, I would say, why did I post that? But in that moment, I didn't fucking care about what other people will think, because I was also so far away from it. I wasn't surrounded by like the pressure or the people that I could feel, what do they think about it? So it also, being overseas, being in a surrounding no one knows you, gives you also kind of like the freedom to post whatever you fucking want. I
think that's such a good thing to say. Like, if ever I want to post something, I'm like, am I doing this because of how something's going to perceive it, or like do it? I literally won't. I only post things because I don't care what anybody thinks about it.
Exactly.
I'm just posting it because I want to. Like, I think that's the way it should be. Because it's like, for me, it's like, if my friend was here, I'd want to tell them this story. So that's how I view my stories. Or like stuff that I post, I'm like, I'm just telling my friends who aren't here, like what I'm doing. In the nicest way, like.
Exactly. And especially like, I think we have to free ourselves, like our mindset, that every perception is different. Just because you think, that might be uncool or whatever, it doesn't mean that other people perceive it that way as well. Like, even if you post something you feel like, that might be uncool, there will be, I can assure you,
somebody who thinks it,
so many people will feel, that's so strong that this person posts that, without actually thinking about what others think. Because, and especially so many people are so worried about what other people think of them that they don't have time to think about you. So you think it's not the society, it's more like the social media.
I don't think it's society. I definitely think it's more like social media. And how you use it.
What also helps me is to keep in mind, don't let social media use you. You use social media. And that's exactly the mindset I'm doing my Instagrams, because I use it to spread a message. I don't let Instagram use me to be caught up in like scrolling or like get lost in scrolling.
It's a big thing with like my mental health page. I was like, I could make videos that like would be more popular, or that would reach more people because of how Instagram wants it to be.
Exactly.
But that's not how I want to post.
That's not your expression.
And although I might reach more people with that, I'm not reaching people with my authentic self.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm reaching more people with what Instagram thinks it should be. So that's why like a lot of my posts, I'm like, I know that it's not going to reach loads of people because it's like words on a screen.
It's your personality. I believe that the people who do things from the bottom of their heart, they are more successful in the long run, the long-term value. Or you don't want to amuse people in a short term. You want to have a meaningful impact on people in the long run.
I just post when I'm ready to. That's the way I use it. Like that's what I mean. It has to be authentic for me. I have to really want to post about it. Because then I post about it and I'm like, okay, this is like,
that's a lot of heart and soul in this post.
I think it does come across like that, especially because like a lot of the things I talk about are quite deep. They're like, when I post something, I hope people realize, like this is like, he wants to talk about this.
What helped you to be vulnerable?
What helped me to be vulnerable? That's a good question. I thought about this. I think it's not actually a positive thing about why I was vulnerable. I think my survival technique growing up as a kid was to be vulnerable, was to talk. When I got older, I was so used to talking about my feelings. I think I was always vulnerable, if that makes sense. I want to help people because of like stuff that happened to me, I didn't want anyone else to go through that. So I always wanted to like look after someone. That means that I was always open with people because I wanted to talk to them about how they felt. And obviously the best way of getting people to talk about how they feel is like showing that you're vulnerable, you know, being open to them. It's why like now I feel like people can talk to me about anything because I'm just open about it all the time. That helped me be vulnerable. I definitely think my parents as well, growing up in the environment that I did, they were very open, very emotional people. I was very lucky with that, partially because I moved around a lot as a kid. So it was just like me, my brother, and my parents.
We know the documentary.
Yeah, we've seen the documentary.
Jacob is in the national TV.
Yeah, I'm a movie star.
What was it?
It was called like Moving Day.
Moving Day.
And I was like 5 or 6, and my family like moved to Scotland, and it was like a TV show made about us moving.
I can cut it out if you don't want it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. We can put a little clip of me in.
Eating pizza.
But yeah, anyway, it's like an example of like we moved around a lot as kids, so we just had each other, and so like I didn't really have like a childhood friend or stuff like that. So I think like we were very close as a family, and so that being close meant we talked a lot about things, and like I always knew I could talk to my parents about anything. So I think that's what helped me be vulnerable, that like I grew up in that environment. So yeah, I'd say those like 2 things.
Okay. And what would you, if someone asked you how can I become vulnerable, what was my tip? What would your advice be?
That's a good question. I think firstly, to be like vulnerable, you have to be like content with yourself or content with what you're sharing. Sometimes you can overshare or be over vulnerable and it can backfire when you're not ready for it. But I would just always say that like, as we said before, I've never talked to anyone about how I felt or my mental health, and like I've come out of it in like a negative situation. And even if like maybe there are 1 or 2 times where I have, the feeling of like that lasts nowhere near as long as being vulnerable, talking to someone, and that feeling of being afterwards of feeling better, feeling like good. So if I had like an advice, I'd just say like all the things that hold you back from being vulnerable, once you actually are vulnerable, they just like disappear, because you realize that in general human beings are really lovely people who want to help other people. Like everyone's a lot more empathetic than you think.
Doing the step, being vulnerable, let other people open up.
And you'll have to that's what I'm about to say, like you have to realize that like you being vulnerable, that person you're talking to might want to also be vulnerable, and you being vulnerable make them be open about it. It's
and
like
then you're strong. You're strong anyways. That's a strength. How can we learn to look for help without feeling weak?
It's a good question. I think by accepting that help isn't like, it's not a sign of weakness, that like wanting to solve your problems or wanting to get better, that's a sign of strength. If you like don't want to solve your problems, even like not just for you as a person, to the people around you, you're then, if you don't want to solve those problems and you think it's weak to go and solve those problems, you're not benefiting the people around you. I'm gonna think about it, because it's a good question, like especially with guys, about how they feel weak.
That's a hard question.
I think once you've gone for help, you realize that it's not a weakness. I think the weakness comes from the fear of it beforehand, and like you just have to take that leap into getting help, and then you realize it's not weak. Like I was weaker before therapy than I am now. Like you realize going through therapy or going through a change that you are stronger. Like my mind is more callous, my mind is more stronger now than it was before.
That's another point where our brain tries to trick us, because feeling weak or like thinking that you are weak is just like your brain talking to you. And like that's the thing, our brains work in the way that they don't want to go outside the comfort zone, because if they stay in the state they are, it's like easier, it's like comfortable, they don't have to work that much, comparing to being in a situation or opening up where they actually have to develop, because that takes a lot of energy. So our brain automatically gives us the thoughts of like staying where you are, because it means less energy for your brain. And staying in the state. It's basically your brain being a shitty person.
Yeah.
To like your brain
Your brain is comfortable in the environment it's in.
And basically seeing your brain as a person or a thing that don't want you to grow.
Yeah.
Because that's the way you can trick your brain.
Yeah, I'm just speaking from like a guy's perspective. That like why guys might find it hard why they might think it's weak. It's because it's admitting like defeat. You're like admitting that you need help.
Yeah.
Guys grow up feeling like, as we talked about before, that they shouldn't be like that, or they don't need to be like that. A man should just be able to deal with things.
Yeah.
You know, that responsibility. That's where I feel the weakness comes from.
Yeah.
Which is based on how you grew up as a kid, not on actual anything that makes sense.
Yeah. And also, like, I think the stereotypes we grow up with, think about it. Like, do we want to live our lives how our grandparents lived their life? No, we don't. Yeah. The stereotypes we grow up with, they don't match the ideals we live by.
Yeah.
So free yourself from that.
Yeah. As I said, like, I'm so much more happier now that I've done all of that than I was before.
Yeah. Like, that's true strength, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, I've got an interesting like thing to talk about. When I came back from travelling, how like I mourned myself.
Yeah.
Like, I'd changed so much, and I went back to the places I used to be. Even though it was only like a year difference, I remember going back and thinking back to how I'd lived my life or how my life was before. Yeah. And it was really like upsetting. Mm-hmm. I actually think I wrote a poem about it, about how...
Do you have the poem?
Yeah, I think I got a poem. Do you want me to read the poem?
If you want, you don't have to.
Yeah. Oh, it's a bit deep. It was like reflecting back on who I was and like how I used to live my life. Mm-hmm. And my brain was so used to living that way that like that was normal life, that now I had different connections, different pathways. It was like uncomfortable. It'd been so used to like fighting battles all the time, it felt lost without it. So like this poem that I wrote was to do with that. Pitying the pain you went through, years of torment now some distant past, the mental scars still a reminder of the damage done, always afraid of the shadows creeping back in. The uneasy feeling of being proud, knowing others suffered from your battle. Guilt, the constant humming in the background. Thankful you are alive, but aware of those who aren't yet thankful. The innocence of your soul stained, grieving the person who you used to be. Uneasy with praise, like taking a claim for someone else's achievements. A piece of you left behind, forever lost in the void of pain. So like that was the whole thing of being a different person and grieving that old person and like what they went through and what the people around them went through. Because it's something that I don't think you hear talked about, that like becoming a new person, you change. And like that can sometimes change who your friends are, who your like lifestyle is, your relationships. And although you feel better, your life is different. Yeah. And that's a difficult change to have, to realise that you're like, other people's perception of you is still that old person. Yeah. And like watching them having to realise who you are now. Yeah. So that's what that poem was about. Yeah.
That's a whole topic as well, to talk about how you feel coming back home after you've travelled and how you have grown so much. Yeah.
That I remember like coming back, and like it didn't take long for people to be like, wow, you're different. And like not like physically I look different, but also it's like, I remember my brother being like, well, you're just more of like an adult now. You're more mature. And I was like, yeah, I probably am.
Okay, we are soon finished with the episode. But there are a few things I wrote down. What do you wish more people will understand or know about men's acting?
About men?
Yeah.
How men act.
What do you wish more people would understand?
That men probably think a lot more than people realise. I think men are more critical of themselves than anyone else. And that a lot of men just crave to be loved. And that a lot of men grow up feeling that they need to have like earned love, that love doesn't come naturally to them. Yeah. That like they need to provide to be loved. Sometimes men act in a way because that's how they feel they need to be loved. Yeah. And actually just showing men just like compassionate love is, it might be odd, but it's what men want. Yeah. Deep down. Yeah. And just because men don't talk about their feelings doesn't mean that you shouldn't try and prompt them to talk about them. Yeah. Just because someone's closed off to their feelings, don't ignore those conversations with them, because they'll want to talk about it. They just don't want to bring it up.
Yeah, and they maybe also don't know how.
Yeah. Or they don't know how to talk about it.
Do you think Because I know it for myself that self-love is such a big thing. Do you think, is it doable for men as well in that?
Yeah, it's very...
It's just different,
unnatural.
probably. Yeah.
Very. I've found it hard to give self-love to myself.
Yeah.
Very hard to, I think, for guys to appreciate a lot of things about themselves, like whether it's like physical, mental, like the relationships they have. A lot of guys will struggle to compliment themselves, but that's because of like the environment that they've like grown up in.
Yeah.
So maybe more like not what I want for people to think about men, but for men to practice like self-love.
Yeah, I think like maybe that helps. For like, in my perspective, self-love is not about loving everything about you.
No.
Self-love is more about accepting everything about you.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's definitely think, like, I struggle with that, of like accepting everything about me. I've talked about it in here, like being over emotional or whatever it may be. Because you said like nobody's perfect, so you don't have to love yourself all the time, because you're not always perfect. But accepting like, oh, I've got those things about me that you know,
and being aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, this could go for not just men, but for everyone. Just like everyone just being kinder. I think the world's so set on dividing, it's causing division between everyone, whether it's like race, religion, gender, politics, whatever it is. It's like, feels like, especially on social media or wherever you go, that everyone's trying to fight each other over everything. Just in general, just like be kind.
Because when we break it down, each of us is the same, feels the same, is a normal human being. And I think that's what you said, like it's focused on dividing things and people, because if we would act as a unit, that would be the most powerful thing.
I think it's definitely a privilege of going traveling as well. You see how other people interact. Like some of the places where I've felt the strongest community was in like Guatemala or Peru, places where people are just like kind to each other all the time. And it's like it's lovely to see, but it's also upsetting to see, because then you think about what it's like back home. They didn't have everything that people like where I'm from have. Like they don't have a lot of the privileges that like people where I come from have. But yet they were still so happy and so content because they had that community. They had that like feeling around them, which is I just think he's lost so much now.
What would you say to your younger self?
Ooh, to be honest, I have these conversations with myself a lot. I feel like it's part of like mental health and self-love is speaking to your inner child. So I already do this quite a lot, especially when I'm journaling. And like what I say to myself is like, obviously like, be kinder to yourself, all those things, but just follow whatever happens. Since I went traveling, like I've listened to my inner self so much more, like my inner child, like whatever I want that inner child wants to do, I go and do it. Going and kicking a rugby ball, going for runs, whatever that like inner child wants to do, like I listen to it more. So I'm defo more like, I wouldn't even say like I'm saying anything to it now, it's more saying stuff to me. And I'm listening to that. But one thing I live by is like I don't have regrets about anything. So like I don't want to look back and tell myself like, oh, don't do this or like whatever, because like mistakes, I think this is the thing as well, I've grown up like understanding that like everything happens for a reason. And that like pain is such a good lesson to live by and such a great opportunity to grow. So like embrace all of it, like even the bad, especially the bad. I think in the past like 2 years, whenever like I've had loads of emotions that I've needed to deal with, or like bad things have happened, I've had such a positive mindset where I'm like, okay, like I'm ready to like deal with this. Like I want, like I view it positively. I'm like, oh, it's a chance to like grow or like learn things about myself. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Just embracing it all. Life's a roller coaster of ups and downs, and enjoying the downs as much as you enjoy the ups.
Okay, that's great. And what do you think is the way to happiness?
The way to happiness. The way to happiness is to start with yourself. No matter what point in life you are, you could be like teenager, you could be older, to like firstly make sure you're happy with you. You're happy with who you are. Because then you can then go and explore and put yourself out there and gain happiness from other people. Don't like rely on other people for your happiness.
Exactly.
So like for true happiness, it has to come from within. And to get to that point, you've got to be like content with who you are. And that doesn't just mean like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. It's like, as we've said before, acknowledging that there might be some things wrong with you that you want to work on, and then just following that voice inside you of who wants to be happy or wants to like go and do happy things. Honestly, we've talked about this so many times, like you could be in the most amazing places in the world and be happy with yourself, but then surrounding yourself with people who like make you happy is not like, that's true happiness as well.
The last thing to like end the episode with would be, is a quote or learning you will never forget?
Ooh, that's a good one. There's
I'm pretty proud of like the
these are good questions. It's funny, like 2 always come to my mind, and they're both from Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
One of them is not all those who wander are lost.
Yeah.
I think it's a great one for like when you're traveling. It always like makes me feel like even when I'm on my own or whatever, that I'm not lost. I'm where I want to be. And then the other one, like one of the characters, like he said, "Oh, I wish this bad thing hadn't happened in my lifetime."
In Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
still there, yeah.
Yeah. And Gandalf says, "And so do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that's given to us." I
have goosebumps. You can't see it, but
I love that quote because it's so true. It's like, no matter what happens, that's what we're talking about before, no matter what happens in your life, no matter what's going on, like, you can't change any of that. You can just decide what to do with the time that's given to you.
Is there anything you want to say?
Just to reiterate, guys, just talk. Please talk.
Yeah.
If you want to, even if you'd never met me before and you want to like message my Instagram page, I'm more than happy to just chat to anyone.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, if you see us somewhere out,
take
up more than us.
Yeah, probably.
But if you see us on the bus or like walking around, just like don't hesitate to like approach us and like talk to us or like message us.
And like even it could be like the most mundane thing ever. You might think it's the most mundane thing ever, but to you it's a big thing. So like just talk.
Yeah, talk. Show more love.
Yeah.
That was it.